Thank you everybody for coming out. My name is Kelley Edwards and I coordinate Partners in Community, which is Clinton's Prevention Council, and we actually have a few members in the room, so thank you guys for coming out also. I'm going to let these young ladies introduce themselves to you.
I'm Shelby. I'm a senior, and I'm also the president of REACT youth group at Morgan and a board member on Partners in Community.
And I'm Bailey. I'm also a senior. I'm the vice president of REACT, and I attend the picking things as well.
So what we're going to do tonight is give you a little bit of information, or actually a lot of information about what we know as prevention people about marijuana. And this is not information that is generally publicized by the media. You're not seeing billboards out there that are going to show you what we're going to show you tonight. However, this is really important information because we don't want the health of our young people or even us as adults to be compromised. So it's important to learn what we've got going tonight. We are going to do a little bit of coloring to keep your interest going. So I think without further ado, I'm going to do a little bit of science and research information, and then the girls are going to talk about what's going on for them as young people in town today. Okay? All right, if you guys want to sit, it was probably not. Okay. So, I'm going to jump right into it. Pretty much what I read when I look around or even just talk to people is, it's a plant. It's harmless. What could it possibly do, right? How many have heard that? In some way, shape, or form, right? The truth of it is this. Way back when I was just born, when a lot of people were smoking marijuana, the average THC, does anybody know what THC stands for? Doesn't matter. What it is that's the component of marijuana that makes the hallucinations happen, okay? THC is the part that gives you the high, that makes you feel good, all right? So back in the 70s, THC content of marijuana was only 1%. So maybe people smoked it, they got a little bit of a high off of it, and that was the end of that, okay? Moving up to 1985, getting closer to when all these young people might have been thinking about being born, it was 3.5%. So they were raising the plants a little bit differently, the THC content was rising. In 2006, so that's even 8 years ago from now, the average was 15% hallucinogen, all right? So if we're raising the content of hallucinogen, you can well imagine that the high is what? Stronger, better, lasts longer. No, go ahead, say it out. Today, the way that they're, with all the technology and everything that they know about gardening and such, you can actually get marijuana that's 90% THC, which is unbelievable. If you could only imagine what the high is, and that's called dabbing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So clearly, if you're using it now with the 5 times what it was, you need to smoke less to get high. Smoking the same amount as before produces a stronger and longer lasting high, okay? And if your brain is prone to anxiety when using marijuana, you can imagine the panic attacks that marijuana might bring on. That we'll get to a little bit more. Does everybody understand that? So we just have a bigger amount of hallucinogen in a regular joint, say, in the little cigarette, okay? All right. Yes, marijuana is addictive. Everybody says, oh, it's not, it is. It is. And I'm going to show you why it is. What research has shown us is that 1 in 10 adults and 1 in 6 teenagers who just try it will become addicted. Okay? Yes, that is true. Research has proven it. I don't care whose mother, uncle, brother, grandfather said it's not true, it is. There's more than one study out there that is showing that people who are using regularly, which is 10 joints a month, which isn't that much, are getting addicted and having to go through rehab and the whole thing, like alcoholism, okay? They're having the withdrawal symptoms. The teen brain especially is more susceptible to addiction because it's not fully developed yet, and that we're going to go into, okay? So, here's where your coloring sheets of the brain and your markers and crayons come into play. because I know going back to science class might be a little disheartening for some. We're going to make it fun, all right? So, when we're forming in our mother's stomachs, okay, the brain is going crazy. There's cells being produced by the millions, okay? At birth, the gray matter, so if we looked at it like a cow brain in science class or something, you know how it looks like grayish? That's getting thicker after we're born. So by age 6, the actual size of the brain, that's why kids look so funny, because their heads are so big and their bodies are still little. So by age 6, the brain is 95% what size it's going to be, okay? But the prefrontal cortex, which is this part right here, is the least developed. The brain actually starts developing back here because this is where all our involuntary function is, our breathing, our heart rate, the stuff we don't have to think about. That gets perfected first, and then it moves forward. Okay, which is why a toddler cannot do trigonometry. Make sense? Okay. At puberty, so 12, 13, around there, the brain starts to prune. Okay. Cells are dying off based upon the activity of the brain, which is why we want what's going on in adolescence to be positive, because those are the connections we want to retain as adults. Make sense? So if the brain is immersed while it's trying to form in chemicals or alcohol and such, gray matter is actually lost, damaged, or altered. And when you mess up your gray matter, it doesn't come back in adulthood. Okay? So if as an adolescent you are altering the gray matter of your brain, it doesn't reconnect, it doesn't reform as an adult. Okay? And you'll hear a little bit more about that in a second. Okay, so here's the picture you've got. Over there, so pick up something to color with, and you're going to color in right here. This is the front of your brain. Okay? So this would be like me standing this way. So the frontal cortex is right here, my forehead. The frontal cortex is all the stuff that you expect your teenager to be doing, right? Choosing right from wrong, problem solving, making good decisions, thinking and analyzing. All right, we don't ask our 5-year-olds to do those things because their brain isn't ready for it. But as we're moving on toward our 20s, and this is really starting to form, these are the skills that are starting to really, you should be getting better at. Okay? So that's the frontal cortex. So go ahead, color that part in, make it look good, and that's all of our good thinking, reasoning, decision making. Okay? As I said, it develops last. And what research, and this is new research within the last 6 years or so, they have found that we do not have a fully developed brain until we are 25. 25. Okay, and a lot of adults are like, yeah, that's why adolescence keeps going into 20. But it's true. All right, so again, I go back to, if you're immersing that part of your head in chemicals, what's going to happen to the development? It's not fully ready yet, right? Okay? All right. I challenge everyone to use this word in a sentence tomorrow. Nucleus accumbens. It's everyday vocabulary, right? This is the part of your brain that goes, woohoo! This smells good. This feels good. I like this. I'm having a good time. Okay? That's the part when you bite into cheesecake that goes, yes, another bite, please. Okay? Pleasure, euphoria. All right? Very important part of our brain. Then finally, the other part I want to point out now is the amygdala. And that's the part we all learned in school, fight or flight. Okay? Where we get anxious about something. The adrenaline starts pumping. Are we going to run away from this challenge, or are we going to stick it out and fight the challenge? It's also emotional learning. Obviously, if Bailey threatens me, I learn, don't want to be with Bailey, right? So that's the part of our brain that addresses those functions. And long-term memory also. Okay, the amygdala. Frontal cortex, nucleus accumbens, and amygdala. Feel free to color all those in, okay? Because I'm going to show you what's going to happen. So this is in a good brain. This is roughly the size and the location, okay? When an adolescent smokes marijuana, roughly 10 joints a month, these are what happens. The frontal cortex loses gray matter, and that's what remember I told you? It doesn't come back? Okay? So all these connections that are trying to form newly, because like we said, we haven't developed them all yet, don't happen. Right? Obviously, it doesn't look like somebody took a bite out of it, but for the sake of discussion. The nucleus accumbens, the part that says, yay, it tastes good, it feels good, the receptors deaden, and this is where that addiction comes in, guys. So when you first, it's like, feel good, like this, right? Maybe you smoke again and again and again, and the receptors are saying, I want more, please. So that 1 time a week isn't enough anymore. 2 times a week isn't enough anymore. These receptors in here want to feel good, right? They want to feel good. And that's why it keeps asking for more and more and more of the chemical that you're introducing. Okay? If you continue to smoke, what the studies have found, frighteningly so, is that this enlarges, changes shape and volume, and doesn't ever go back to normal. So if you smoke while you're a teenager, and your nucleus accumbens turns into this blobby thing, all misshapen, doesn't go back to normal when you're 45. So how do you think it might affect the pleasure that you're just getting from cheesesteak, or pizza, right? Maybe you never liked cheesesteak, okay, just bad example. But you know what I'm saying? It is going to affect what happens later on in your life, all right? And then this, again, the receptors at first like it. They're calmed down, right? One of the big things about marijuana, people tell me it chills everybody out. Nobody's violent when they're smoking pot. Well, that's true. However, you smoke it, you need more, you need more, you need more to calm that anxiety, okay? So if you're already prone and you're a little nervous and you're hyped up about stuff and you're nervous about your test and you're smoking it and you're feeling better, keep doing that. And the anxiousness that you feel when you're not smoking is going to be worse than when you started. Does that make sense? Okay? So, a little bit of brain anatomy. Does anybody have a question before we move on? Yes, ma'am.
So, like, the thing with the 2, like the red.
Yep, nucleus accumbens.
Yeah, sorry. So, like, when you eat something, would you like it more or would you like it less? Since it's bigger.
Actually, because it's misshapen and its function has been altered, you're going to like it less. Okay? If you kept it intact and normal, it probably would be all good. Make sense? Anybody else? Because this is really important to understanding why marijuana is not a great idea. And this is all relatively new research in the last 3 years or so. Okay? So I went over a lot of this. Let me just double check if I missed anything. Okay, this last piece, I did not talk about dopamine. But dopamine is a hormone, what is it, a new neurotransmitter? Hormone that is released by that nucleus accumbens when it says, oh, this is pleasurable, this is good, I like it. Initially, when you start using substances, that dopamine is running good, which is what makes you want to come back for more. But over time, like I said, the receptors get messed up, and less dopamine is actually released over time. And that is where you start to see some of the marijuana users that are just kind of like on the couch. They don't want to go to class anymore. They don't want to go to work anymore. Their motivation, their drive, their desire to get up and do things is really decreased. And that's because of that dopamine getting interrupted. Does that make sense? Okay? And that's, this is a vicious cycle, as you can well imagine, right? Okay. Any other questions? Great. Okay. All right, so, as one might expect from, screwing around with our brain connections, we're going to create some mental illness with marijuana use. Okay? Studies have shown marijuana to be linked to schizophrenia, psychosis, depression, and anxiety. I talked a little bit about where the anxiety might come from with your amygdala getting altered. Depression is the dopamine release that we talked about. Psychosis and schizophrenia, these are new findings that they're coming up with, and at present, they're trying to figure out if you're predispositioned genetically for like a psychosis or a schizophrenia. If you use marijuana, does it mean you're more likely to have that mental illness? They're trying to determine how exactly they play out against one another. Or if you smoke, does that mean... Anyway, they haven't completely come to a conclusion, but they have definitely found a correlation between these mental illnesses and using marijuana. Okay? All right. Here's another bit of research that just came out this year. And it's worth looking at. So what they did is they did a longitudinal study. Does anybody remember what that is? Be brave. What's a longitudinal study?
A study that takes like over many years.
Yes, exactly. So they started looking at some folks that were persistent and heavy user, or no, I'm sorry, regular marijuana use. So back to that 10 joints a month, okay? While they were teenagers, so 16 and 17 years old, and then looked at them again in their 30s, okay? And what they found is that the heavy use lowered their IQ by 6 to 8 points. So what, you say, right? If I'm a genius, 6 to 8 points, I can afford to lose that. I'm not sure how many people in the room fall into that genius category. I don't. But, you know, if you're kind of average and in the middle, 6 to 8 points can be significant. Okay? And again, we look at the decrease in gray matter and all of that contributes to it. All right? New research. Another new study this year showed a link between the THC, which is the ingredient that creates the high, can have long-lasting damage to your immune system. So they're finding that young people that smoked in their teens are coming up in their 30s, 20s and 30s, with chronic inflammatory diseases, such as multiple sclerosis, bowel disease, rheumatoid arthritis. None of those are pleasurable experiences. Okay, so just further, they haven't completely understood the link of it all, but they definitely found that correlation. So just another reason to steer clear.
And that's just increased if the THC is at a 90% consistently, right? You're smoking that?
No, that again was with like roughly 10 joints a month. That's kind of like their standard of average use is what they looked at. So if somebody's smoking like 10, regularly smoking, so that's roughly 10 joints a month throughout adulthood, they have a higher correlation of getting these autoimmune diseases than people who did not or smoked less.
Regardless of the percentage of THC.
Right, I think they were going on like an average of the 15% THC. Yeah.
What about like laced marijuana?
Exactly. Would you like to talk about that a little bit? Go ahead.
Do I want to talk about it? Like what it is?
Well, what have you heard?
Well, you can like lace marijuana with basically anything, like cocaine, lots of Molly, we lace with there.
Yep.
Probably.
LSD.
Yeah, basically, and it like makes it worse. So like, does it increase like your chances of like, does it do anything like your chances of having those like mental illnesses? Does it increase them at all, or?
Directly correlated, they haven't done research that I have been able to find on that yet. What's really scary about that is all the other stuff you know about those drugs, like cocaine. You could be looking to really relax and all of a sudden you're having a heart attack because your heart can't take that. LSD, that's a crazy psychotic drug. So I think, I haven't read any research of laced, like combinations as such that you're saying, but certainly that's a frightening prospect and happening out here. There was, one of my colleagues had an experience in their town where someone bought marijuana that was actually laced with glass. So somebody had like really crushed up glass very finely, and they were smoking it or ingesting it, like they were using it to bake. And so obviously that's can be harmful to your intestines and your whole, gastro system. So yeah, you're never sure, unless you've grown that plant yourself. If you're just buying a bag off of somebody, you never really know exactly what's in that. But that's a great point to bring up, Megan, thank you. Okay, so, you guys may know all of this. This may not even be worth my time, but I figured I'd put it in. So how can it be consumed? Smoked as a cigarette or joint, or blunt as they call them, in a bong. It can be put in an e-cig and smoked. Eaten in food, brewed as tea, soda, and juice. Dabbing. Who's heard of dabbing? Aside from me mentioning it briefly. Ma'am in the back. Would you like to say that?
Dabbing is when it's turned into like a wax form. Almost looks like lip balm, but it's very potent, and you can eat it, you can put it on your lips, you can smoke it, but it's much more powerful than just regular
Right, that's
marijuana.
the 90% THC stuff. That stuff right there that looks like peanut butter, that's what the dabbing is all about. Okay? And then here is just another example of it being vaporized. It's like a mini bong. Okay, so lots of different
I
ways.
think that's important to know, though, because I don't know if you're getting into the medical marijuana, but.
A little bit, but go ahead.
But I'm saying, people aren't aware of the different forms that if we do and when we do go to medical marijuana, that some of the forms are going to be available and some of which may be easily to be ingested by other than those who was intended to ingest it.
You are providing a fantastic segue. Thank you.
Where's the fight?
Okay, so as Mr. Bontempo was just bringing up, these are legitimate products that are in Colorado and Washington State. Colorado, and I'm going to get to this in a second, but Colorado and Washington State have legalized recreational use of marijuana, which basically is like what we have going on for alcohol, they have going on for marijuana. So yes, you can go into a bar in Colorado and smoke a joint. Okay, you can't do it at school and you can't do it at work, but it's legal just like an adult having a beer in America, or I mean in Connecticut. But these are some of the scary things going on with the edibles that I mentioned in the last slide. I mean, because it's obvious, but what does this look just like in Connecticut? Pop-Tarts. What about this? A Klondike bar, soda, right?
Ganja joy.
And it's funny, it is funny, it definitely is entertaining, but as a mom, I think, oh my God, if I had a 3 or 4-year-old and I had a pile of this and this and this in my cabinet, would the 3-year-old know which Pop-Tart box or Pop-Tart box to grab? Not necessarily. You know, this is packaged a little bit differently, but a 3-year-old doesn't really know the difference. They just know mom always has these, so this must be the same and it tastes good, right? So what Colorado and Washington are finding is there's a large increase in their emergency room admissions for children because of these accidental ingestions. And as I said before or I was talking before about dosing or serving size, like something like this, like a Klondike bar, we all know how big that is, right? Like roughly 4 inches, 5 inches square, something like that. Some of these items say the serving size is like 1/3. Now, who sits down and cuts their Klondike bar into 3 pieces? Oh, okay, Mr. Ross. I don't. That whole thing goes down. And so, you know, I would think I would pick up my Klondike bar and do the same thing and not necessarily think like, wow, now I'm getting 3 times the amount of marijuana that is safe for my body, and I could really be knocked down. Okay, so there's a lot to this whole like edible marijuana thing or drinkable marijuana thing. I mean, if I saw that in somebody's fridge and I was little, that orange soda looks pretty good. And again, the serving size for that might be 1/3 of the bottle, half of the bottle. Anybody have a comment or a question or anything about this?
Does the label say it contains marijuana or not?
Yes, they have to, in Colorado and Washington State, it does have to be labeled that, and it probably says it on the back or something, or you see like, you know, you see the leaves somewhere on it. But again,
The strawberry.
Does a child notice that? Probably not. Probably not. Mike?
Would they sell those at like a normal grocery store? Like,
Right now, what I know, which I can only tell you what I know, but I could look into it more, is that they have, boutique is the wrong word, like stores that sell these products. So it's not necessarily like, you would walk into Big Y and there it would be right next to the normal products. You would have to go to a special store to get it. But what's more scary is what happens when you get it home, and who has the access to it. Okay? All right, any other comments or thoughts? Okay. Yes, Mia?
Is there like an age limit on like in like Colorado and stuff?
Right, for 18 and under, it's still illegal. So if you're an adult, you can recreationally use it out there. Okay?
It's not 21.
I think it's 18. Okay? This doesn't have anything fancy on it, unfortunately, because it was just brought up to me right before we started, and I said, yes, we need to remember to talk about that. And I'm going to put it out to you guys. What do you know about synthetic marijuana? What have you heard about synthetic marijuana? Anything?
It's being sold at Shell.
It's being sold at Shell?
It was.
It
Isn't
was.
K2 like really, really dangerous?
Yes, ma'am. It is. And it was sold here in Clinton by a lot of different places. Yep. What else? Hold on, Kiana. Anybody else hear anything? All right, Kiana, what do you know?
It's usually labeled as potpourri, and it induces the same kind of high as the marijuana, but it is definitely much more dangerous and can cause a lot more brain damage because of the mix of the chemicals inside of it. I just know the big thing is it was labeled as potpourri, but kids were all buying it and smoking it to get the same high.
Yeah, it says like not intended for human consumption, but then, oop, there it goes. Yes, so synthetic marijuana was developed trying to create a safer high, okay? But what ended up happening was basically going out into the woods, crunching up whatever you could find out there, and spraying it with chemicals from the garage, and then smoking it. I mean, that's really an exaggerated explanation, but that's basically what you're doing if you're doing synthetic pot, is you don't know what chemicals are on that, you're not exactly sure what that content is. It might look like leaves or berries and such, but it doesn't have any regulation on it, and so it's a very dangerous thing. There have been people who have died. There have been people who have been like a traumatic brain injury result after smoking synthetic marijuana one time. Okay, not habitual, one time. Yes, ma'am?
Can you get high like for synthetic marijuana since it's like worse? Can you get high from just smelling it?
I do not know. That's a great question that I
I
will
know
look
like
into.
if you just smell like regular pot, like you
Yep, the high,
you're like
the,
smelling like the,
yep.
but I was just curious.
I will look into that question because I would like to know that too. Thanks for bringing that up. It is illegal in Connecticut now. 2 years ago or so, they did make it illegal to sell in Connecticut, thank God, because it is really dangerous. You don't know what's in it, and the high is not worth the risk at all. So if you see or you know anybody who's like, oh, it's synthetic, it's fine, it's not. It's worse than marijuana because it is not a plant. You don't know what it is, okay? All right. I want to give you guys a little bit of information because it is a little confusing about, well, is it legal in Connecticut now? What does this decriminalization mean? Have you guys talked about that at all, or parents, do you have an understanding of what all that means? Megan does?
Well, we talked about it in AP Gov, so.
Okay, excellent. Anybody else? Okay, so what is going on in our state, in Connecticut, is that they did decriminalize marijuana. That does not mean it's legal to smoke wherever you feel like it. Okay, first of all, If you're 18 or if you're under 18, it is still illegal, period, the end. You can't have it, you can't smoke it, it's illegal, still, okay? What decriminalization means is it's not a felony, you're not gonna go to jail if you have these small amounts, okay? So if you're 18 and older in Connecticut, you can have, if you get caught, you're not going straight to jail. You're basically getting a fine. If you get caught again with these small amounts, okay, then you might get jail. More likely you're going to get another fine, okay? If you have 4 ounces or more, the way that they look at that is you're probably going to sell it. It doesn't mean like, well, that's all for my personal consumption, because that's a lot. 200 joints, okay? So if you've got this much and you're over 18, they consider that a felony, and you're going to get a really big fine or jail time. So that's what decriminalization is about in Connecticut. Okay? Whereas before, if you were caught with half an ounce, 1 joint, you were potentially arrested, put in jail. It was a much more severe consequence. Does that make sense? That's what decriminalization means. All right? It doesn't mean legal. Madame?
What if you have like 4 ounces, but it's your first offense? Is it still a misdemeanor?
Yes. Okay? Second offenses, a little bit more money, a little bit more jail. Okay? And this is all for adults. What happens to the youth that get caught? Anybody?
Suspended from school.
Okay, so there's school policy, right?
Are
Okay.
they treated as adults,
No.
like alcohol?
It depends.
Depending on what they commit as a felony?
It honestly, it depends on the court system. I know that's a weak answer, but it's what we have found to be true. What I'm hearing the students say, and what I know to be true, is absolutely there is school policy enforced by the Board of Education that is no tolerance, correct? So if you are a student and you get caught with it at all, whatever the amount, it goes to the Board of Ed and they determine what is it suspension for the first offense and then expulsion for the second? Do I understand? Potentially, right. And of course, that's always at the discretion of the Board of Education. In the community, yes, it is an arrestable offense. The juvenile usually goes to juvenile court. What we're hoping is a lot of communities, and Clinton has this, is that they would be deferred to what's called the Juvenile Review Board, which is run by the Youth and Family Service Bureau here. I'm part of it, Peter Schulteis is part of it. And the youth comes before that with their parents, and they're able to avoid regular court by coming in front of basically a jury of Clinton residents, and then they have to do restitution. So maybe they're going to have to watch this video and learn about marijuana, the truths about marijuana. Maybe they're going to have to do some community service. Maybe that the board would determine what their punishment, so to speak, would be. But all in all, we're hoping to teach that young person to make a better choice next time. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Mike?
Does the social host law refer to marijuana, or is that just for alcohol? Or he gets busted with
Social host law
parents or
right now is just alcohol, but I don't know the answer to that. Does anybody know? The social
Some people
host.
don't know what the social host.
Yeah. Do you want to say? People are tired of listening to me.
No, you can take it.
Okay, the social host law, basically, to sum it up really succinctly, is a parent can't provide alcohol to those that are underage in their home.
That's what it was called.
Okay. If they provide marijuana, well, if they're underage, then I'm sure there would be some significant consequence, but that's a great question.
Well, it also means if you're not home and a party happens to your house, you are
Right.
responsible for what
Yes,
happens
you're
in your home.
responsible for what happens there.
The alcohol,
Yeah.
and that can have major consequences with your insurance company. We talk about losing your mortgage as you lose your insurance, I mean, there's big
Exactly.
consequences. I just didn't know whether or not there was any teeth in the marijuana law, like there is in the
Great question,
alcohol
Mike.
law.
That's a great question that I will definitely bring back to our people. Okay.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions on this? Mary?
Just, my understanding of the juvenile review board is it's a one-time shot, right?
Oh, that's changing.
Is it? Okay. So, because my understanding wasn't that you were able to have multiple offenses and then continue going before the juvenile review, but everything
That's in transition right now, yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to touch briefly on what does medical marijuana mean, and then I'm going to give the floor to the young ladies. So Connecticut has decriminalized marijuana. We have a better understanding, hopefully, of what that means. But Connecticut has also made medical marijuana legal, okay? What that means is you have to have one of these qualifying conditions, and it is only these right now that qualify. So if you have chronic back pain at this time in Connecticut, you cannot get medical marijuana. If you have epilepsy, you can. So what happens is, let's see, who can I pick on? Alex has glaucoma and just can't get any relief from any other treatments. So she goes to her doctor and talks about medical marijuana. The doctor gives Alex a certification card, not a bag of pot, a certification card, okay? In Connecticut, there are 5 medical marijuana dispensaries, okay? Alex would have to take her card to this dispensary and meet with a pharmacist. It is actually the pharmacist, not the doctor, the pharmacist that determines how much she's going to get, what potency it is, how frequently should she take it, and so on. Does that sound a little strange to everybody? But that is the way the law reads right now. A pharmacist who does not have any research to base dosing and potency on decides what Alex is going to get for her glaucoma.
So what do they base it on? Just an average?
That's a great question. They are stabbing in the dark.
Why do you say that, given their background
They're-
as pharmacists?
You would be, I actually know personally, due to my involvement on basically a marijuana board in Connecticut, this gentleman who opened a dispensary in Branford. And he will come to the table and say, there is very, very little research out there that tells us exactly what the dose should be and the potency. You know, like, say we go and we need a painkiller. Basically, they know that for Jack's height, weight, size, and other things going on, this is how much you should have, right? This is how much Kathy should have, and this is how much I should have, because the medicine went through an approval process and testing by the Federal Drug Administration, FDA. Marijuana has not gone through any of that testing, and that's what a lot of people are going, wait, what? So there's research that is showing that yes, it's shrinking tumors, which is really exciting. It's decreasing nausea for people that are having to go through chemo. It's increasing appetite for some, pain modification. There are some benefits that research and personal use are coming out with, but they don't have it all. You know what I mean? It's not one complete circle yet. What works for you for your glaucoma might not work for your glaucoma, even though you're roughly the same size. And that's the trouble right now with the medical marijuana field, is they know that there's some benefits, but they don't have all of the information to make it a really accurate science.
But I mean, not that, I don't want to weigh in on the whole idea, but our pharmacists are the most qualified folks in the U.S. on any of the drugs that are going to be available, and even to be able to do that experimentation, because that's what you're saying it ultimately is.
Right.
I would rather have them in their hands as opposed to the medical
I would agree with you.
profession.
But I think a lot of people are shocked when they find out that it's not the doctor that has all of that information, but it's the pharmacist. Absolutely true. So while I wholeheartedly agree that marijuana has a place in medicine, and I think we might get some really exciting things where it's like we're 10 steps ahead of ourselves right now in Connecticut. Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments or thoughts on that? Okay, one more comment I want to make. In the communities that have the dispensaries, not in Connecticut, because we've just recently gotten the ball rolling. Our dispensaries just opened on October 1st, and the closest one to Clinton is Branford. But in other states that have medical marijuana, the young people have increased access when there's a dispensary in that town. Not shocking news, but certainly as somebody who's very aware of what goes on in Clinton, I absolutely positively don't want a dispensary in our town, because if that automatically is correlating in other communities that young people have more access, that is very alarming to me. So I'm happy to say that the Planning and Zoning Board in Clinton has forbidden a dispensary to come to town. So that was a really positive and exciting thing that happened on its own, which really was great. We gave a little bit of input, but they decided that. So, okay. The other part of marijuana, so we have the THC, which produces the high. The other part of it is cannabinoids. And that is the piece of marijuana that is being found to be effective to really address some of those medical conditions. Not the THC, but the cannabinoids. So they're doing a lot of research right now trying to separate the high, the THCs, and the cannabinoids so that they can create these materials and medicines where you're not giving a child who has epilepsy and needs control of their seizures something that's also going to make them high. So the science is working on it, but it's not complete. Okay? Because I'm sure everybody has read something about like Charlotte in Colorado whose seizures were lessened, and I think that's amazing. And as a mother, I would absolutely advocate for that. But we've got to get the science up to the use, if that makes sense. Okay? Any thoughts or questions on that? Okay. All right. Enough talking by me. Bailey and Shelby are going to take it over.
So as Kelley just explained, there is clear information why marijuana is dangerous, especially in our youth. But unfortunately, the media is trying to tell another story, and so the youth aren't getting the proper information. So here are some billboards that were put up, and some pictures that were kind of sent around. This one during the Super Bowl. This one down here says that it's safer than alcohol and football, and clearly it might really not be.
And here it's saying, like, why does this league punish us for making it the safer choice, which goes back to the other billboard, which is saying that marijuana is safer than football and alcohol.
And what we're going to talk about later is there are, and what Kelley already said, was that there are consequences for using marijuana and possessing marijuana. So the league or other groups should be punishing the people because there are specific rules. And again, it isn't the safer choice.
I find this one funny. It's like, you're forcing us to drink. Really? Because marijuana is illegal, you're forced to drink. It's just an interesting perspective. And these were put up by the NFL around the Super Bowl last year, which, in case you missed it, it was 2 states that have the legal recreational marijuana. Sorry.
These were sponsored by the NFL?
Yeah, that one was. Yeah.
Yeah, it says, or paid for by the marijuana policy project.
But yeah, on behalf of the NFL, yeah. Yeah, there was, at the, in one of the parking lots at the Super Bowl, there was a huge screen that was put up with constant propaganda about how marijuana is just so safe. It's safe to use if you're an athlete, it's safe to use if you're a teenager, just this constant propaganda that they allowed to be played.
Again, here's the picture just a little closer so you can see. And there's the beer, the wine, and then there's the marijuana, which this ad is trying to convey that it's supposedly safer to use.
And also like drinking and driving, how beer and wine can affect your drinking and driving. So can, your perception while driving, so can marijuana. But this billboard isn't portraying that and misleading people to believe that it's safe to get high and drive. This one right here is saying
Can I say something?
legalize marijuana, billions in taxes. And the people in Colorado believe that it will bring in a lot of money in tax revenue, and it has, but they're also spending a lot of money in treatments and in hospital visits for children and other people who have accidentally taken too much marijuana or ingested too much marijuana.
There's a statistic that is, remember Kevin Sabet said it, I think it's for every dollar that they brought in for taxes, it was $9 or $10 that they were actually ending up spending in what Shelby just said. Treatment, rehab, accidents, crime, things like that. So all that money that they were gonna bring in, they're paying it out tenfold.
Kelly, just a quick question.
Yeah.
Who's the lobby behind this? We know there's gotta be people, who's looking to make all the money on this? I mean, you're saying, billions in taxes, but I don't think the government is out supporting this. There's gotta be some kind of.
It's not the government, but you know what, it's interesting, they say that the Yale and Harvard graduates are now here. The people that are pushing through the whole legalization of pot aren't the long-haired hippies that are, hey man, these are businessmen that know exactly what they're doing to bring the revenue in. And there was a Newsweek Time cover, so that we should look for that to add into this, where they're showing some of these people that are really pushing for this and making a business out of it in these other states. And they're MBA graduates of some of the best business schools in the country.
And also, what did you say? Okay. And also right here it says destroys brain cells and brain cells from alcohol and weed, but we just saw in the earlier slide that it destroys your brain cells.
And again, with this picture right here, I know that I've seen it on Twitter, on other social media websites, and I'm sure that a lot of the other students have as well. And so this picture and others that are very similar are easily circulating through the different social media sites, and many students are seeing this, and so many students are getting misinformation.
And also right here when it's saying it's not addictive, it is, and it treats cancer. It doesn't necessarily treat cancer, it gives cancer patients who are having chemotherapy maybe have an appetite if they're, don't have one. And there have been overdoses as well.
Do you guys remember what the 0 deaths in history? Do you remember what they say about that?
That there were no deaths.
Right,
from marijuana.
true, no one has overdosed on marijuana, but especially coming out of Colorado right now, the number of intoxicated car crashes as a result of marijuana, marijuana has surpassed every other substance now in Colorado. So, fine, you're not overdosing on it, but there's a lot of other casualties that are happening. But it's the falseness of the advertising that our young people are exposed to, that we're all exposed to. How do you know any different, right?
These two posters I found really interesting when I saw them, because I know that from what I've seen, a lot of the kids that I've seen that I know to be smoking pot seem to be the more athletic and popular kids, and maybe it's because they're seeing people like Michael Phelps, a very successful Olympic athlete. Here, Arnold Schwarzenegger, again, famous actor, politician, bodybuilder. They're smoking pot, they're still successful, they're doing fine, and so students are seeing these people and thinking, well, we can be successful, we can do fine if we smoke pot as well.
Okay. These statistics were from 2 years ago.
Yep, 2012.
And it says perception of peer disapproval of substance use. And for 7th graders 2 years ago, believe that 93% of them believed that it was, that their peers would not approve. And then for 8th grade, 92, 9th grade, 65%, 10th grade, 52%, 11th grade, 38%, and 12th grade, 37%.
So how does peer disapproval typically impact use? Do you remember? Yep, typically as disapproval increases, use is, okay? If we think our friends aren't gonna like what we do, probably aren't gonna do it, right? So one of the indicators that prevention people look at is, well, you know, what's the perception of peer disapproval? You guys just took that survey last week, right? There were probably a couple of questions on, you know, would your friends approve of this? Would your parents approve of this, right? So 2 years ago, this is how many students, as Shelby said, thought their peers would disapprove. Okay? All right, go ahead, show them the next one. And as you might expect, what do they see, Shel?
The usage in the past 30 days when taking the survey has greatly increased from 7th grade to 12th grade, from 3 to 41.
So like as the perception of disapproval went down,
The use rate went up.
I don't get this.
who doesn't get it?
What is the, like, what would they?
So like the 12, like only, I don't remember exactly the number. So look at the 12th graders, only 37% thought their peers would disapprove, right?
Okay.
So like 1 in 3 said, well yeah, my friends might not like it. So therefore, not surprisingly, a lot of them are using, 41%. Whereas you look at the 7th graders, 93% thought their friends would disapprove, and only 3% say that they used. Does that make sense? So, yeah, go ahead.
Any other questions?
I want to add, there's a lot of young people in the room, and I know that there's a couple of teachers and administrators in the room, and it might inhibit your response, but as you look at see the 10th graders right there? That's this year's seniors. Okay?
Oh, hey, the freshman class.
The 9th graders are the juniors now. Okay? Looking at those numbers from 2 years ago, do you think your perception of what's going on at Morgan, are those accurate numbers? Should the numbers be higher, lower? What do you think?
From like now, for like us as if we were the juniors now, oh, they should be way up.
So what year are you?
A junior.
So what if you had to guess, safely guess, like don't exaggerate, what would you get?
43.
Oh, percentage?
Yeah.
Yeah, people that use it, I would say probably around 60. Between 50 and 60. Really?
Oh,
It's definitely higher.
I think it's I don't think it's
I don't think it's higher.
I think there's more. There's people. If you were asking how many people have tried it,
Okay.
it's definitely
Yeah.
higher.
Yeah.
But people that regularly use it, I would say around 50 to 60%.
How about the seniors?
Regularly, are we talking like joints every day or like?
No, that wouldn't
like
be-
Every day.
So you're saying 10 joints or more, like 3
The regular
times
use.
40?
How many seniors are in here? Just you guys?
Okay, I would say
And
if you're saying every day, then it would be like, people using it every day for our grade would be like 40%, people who use it like, yeah.
Oh, and our grade is not.
Yeah,
I think you're counting like 30. Like 40%. That's a lot. I don't think that's for.
It's like 120 people in our grade, that's like 50, right?
Whole school, I would say every day is like 40.
That's a lot of people.
That question covers the whole, it says once, even once in 30 days, you have to answer yes to that.
Within the last
Wait,
30 days, yes.
Right.
Alright, but, alright, you guys, the number isn't really like that crucial. I think what's important about the conversation that's happening right now is the perception of how many kids are doing it. I mean, we will actually have these numbers on Monday. We will find out what your guys' responses were, we'll know. How many people said that they had smoked in the last 30 days?
I feel like people lie in those.
And yeah, I mean, there's obviously a margin of error, we get. But I think there's some validity to it because we've been taking this survey since 2005 and the numbers have never really been skewed.
And I think what's important to see is maybe less the exact numbers, but more the trends that are going on. Because as you're seeing, it's going up and up and up as you go through the grades. And so I think the numbers may be higher if everyone were to tell the truth. But at the same time, we're still seeing the trend, the overall trend.
You're right.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Those numbers, do they also show like availability? I mean, if you were to ask a 7th grader, where can you get marijuana? Most of them say, I don't know.
Yeah,
Versus ask
actually,
someone from the high school, I mean, it might be different. So I'm wondering, this isn't just about use, about perception, it also could be about availability of substances and stuff? Is
Yeah.
that also
well,
figured into this at all?
in this particular, in 2012, we did not ask where did they get marijuana. This year we did.
Oh, good.
So on Monday, we will not only find out who said it within 30 days, but also we gave them a whole bunch of options from a peer, I bought it, I grew it, my parents gave it to me, you know, there were lots of different choices. So we'll have an idea of
That's
that.
good, thanks.
But you know what, one question I love to ask the young people is, how quickly could you get, like if you left tonight and wanted some marijuana, how quickly could you get it? Could you get it tonight?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
By tomorrow
Yeah.
afternoon at the latest?
Yeah.
All right, thank you for the honesty. Okay, so one of the famous questions is, yeah, but what's everybody else on Shoreline doing? Guilford and Madison do the same,
I don't know about Madison.
do the same exact survey that we do, the same exact one. So Shelby, go ahead. Or Bailey, whoever, if you guys want to talk about it.
Okay, well, I guess I'll talk about my first reaction when I saw this picture. I was definitely shocked when wasn't so much surprised, but it was kind of disheartening when I saw it. And if you look at this black line right here, that's the current seniors. And so it was kind of hard for Shelby and I to look at that and think, wow, like our grade has, at that time, 2 years ago, had the most users in our school or in our town.
Any comments, reactions, surprises, not surprised?
Not surprised.
Not surprised at all. Why?
Well, not to be like rude, but if you were to look at that grade, you could tell, and like, if so, like, you
Just like
No
from-
offense, guys.
there's like a giant like group of people that you just know, like you can
Okay.
just
And from hearing all like the stories, it's like the same
people
names that have come up for
constantly.
like several years.
And like been doing it for like since like young ages and like got the younger people like into it, like the people like is that great?
How about in comparison to the other? Go ahead.
What is the police doing about it? So everybody knows what's going on in town, everybody knows kids are getting high all the time, 43 percent is huge. It's almost half of our kids are getting tried.
Yeah.
So what is the police doing about it?
Nobody was able to come tonight, no. The police are part of our coalition. They are aware of all of the statistics. I actually get the police log every week, and at least 3 possession arrests a week. Not always young people, but they are aware. They're doing what they can. They don't have the authority, like if Megan said, oh, Mike's got it going on in his house, they don't have the authority to break into his house and make an arrest. So it's complicated, but they absolutely, they know, and they're part of the discussion and part of the prevention effort that we're trying to do by being involved with the young people, talking to the young people, educating parents and educating the younger students. We're hoping to slow that down a lot.
Scary.
It is. Well, and it's about everybody, as we said in the beginning of the talk, it's about everybody learning the truth. Because the media obviously floods us with a lot of misinformation. Not just about this, but about everything. You drink a Bud Light, you're going to be rich and beautiful. You wear Gap jeans and you're perfect. So, it's all about, we have to counter what else is going on the news and the newspaper and magazines and advertising. That's a powerful force with a lot of money behind it. And we're these little community coalitions trying to educate the teachers and the parents and the young people to talk to each other and learn what the real truths are, and not just because some money-making machine told us otherwise. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. I wish that there was enough money for us to put billboards up about brain science and things like that. But it's hard. So it's about conversation and coming to these things and then talking to your family members and your neighbors and your kids' teachers and everybody you can talk to, your churches. Luckily on our coalition, we have all of those different sectors represented, so they're getting this information, but then it's about keeping it going. Does that make sense?
So these are the 2012 numbers.
For Clinton and Guilford, those are 2012. For Madison, that was last year, 2013. They're on an opposite.
So they're on and off.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Do they take the same thing that we do?
Exactly the same, yes.
And so we're gonna get the new numbers Monday
Yeah.
for 2014, which was just taken a couple weeks ago, right?
Yep.
I've also heard, sorry, go ahead.
Well, can you also use Westbrook eventually and Old Saybrook?
Unfortunately, the reason I don't have statistics for those communities is because they don't take these standardized surveys. Clinton, Guilford, and Madison have been blessed to receive a pretty sizable grant for prevention. And that has mandated the use of these surveys for the last several years in these 3 communities. Westbrook and Old Saybrook do not have that survey going on, so they don't have as clear of a picture as we do.
Did Old Saybrook for a while? I thought they did for a while.
No.
There used to be numbers from Larry. Yeah.
Can I just touch on the Old Saybrook
Yes,
piece
please.
for a second? There was a question about what are the police doing in terms of knowing that this number is so high. I work here in Clinton, but I live in Old Saybrook and I have kids in the high school. And I have to say that I see a lot more activity amongst the Clinton Police Department and school in terms of really trying to put prevention programs in place and address the issue. I know that in Saybrook, our biggest thing, or mine as a parent, is the perception of what's acceptable and what's not. And we had some issues in the past where my kids thought that it wasn't okay to smoke marijuana, but that it wasn't bad because they were watching these kids that they looked up to that were successful athletes, successful students, popular, well-liked, well-rounded, came from good families. They were using. And then they had their name on the marquee in front of the school as an all-star athlete or whatnot. And that provided a very difficult, I guess, story or timeline for me to present to my own kids about, well, I realized he's a star athlete. I realized she was the star in the play. But as my child, you need to understand that there's consequences to those choices. So I just want to say that I see, as an employee in Clinton and seeing the kids and the police, that they're doing a much better job, I think, than we are in Saybrook. I was disappointed with our situation, and it was nice to know that there was something different happening over here. But I think that, and I can't think of the word, responsibility and whatnot needs to come from all aspects, at the school level, at the educator level, administrative level, in sports especially. There was that research about how kids in contact sports are more likely to use marijuana or drink alcohol than kids who are involved in non-contact sports. And the perception among us as adults is that if your kid's into sports, they're not doing drugs. And it's actually the complete opposite now. It's not that one little group of kids that you can spot in the corner or walking down the hallway. It's your class president, it's your, not the actual class president, but you know what I mean. It's the kid who stays after to play band, or it's your star basketball player.
It could be anybody.
It's anybody now. It's not the way it used to be, when we were younger and in school.
Right, there was
You
like
could-
one
You could
set.
pick the clique
Right.
and be like, those are the pot smokers. It's not like that anymore.
Sure. Megan, are you the class president?
I'm not.
And-
Michael is, I'm the
Oh,
vice
Michael.
president.
Okay.
Michael.
I was gonna say, I know we've got somebody in here that falls into that role. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Pam, you're right. So what else? Any other comments, thoughts?
I think that I heard something about in other towns, they'd probably be using different drugs. And so I did want to point it out that this is just marijuana. And so this chart, this data doesn't necessarily mean that our town may be the worst town in terms of drugs. It just seems like the trend is that marijuana might be the drug of choice for Clinton students, but it's going to be different in other towns.
Sure, good point.
Yeah, that is a good point.
I'll tell you that neither of those communities is drug-free or even close.
Right.
All across the board, generally, for all of the different substances, nobody is sky high versus another.
What about Brantford? You mentioned having dispensary there.
Brantford does not have this survey, but they are recognized anecdotally that they are having a lot of trouble. They're part of the shoreline prevention group that I'm with, and they come to the table every time with great concerns. With marijuana primarily.
I find it really interesting that in the Clinton numbers for 2012, that somehow the 7th graders seem to have more access than the 8th graders. Am I reading that right?
No, I saw that, but I think it's only one.
No, it's 1%, so that's 2 7th graders more than
okay.
the 8th graders said.
All right.
Yeah, with that, we didn't have a lot of access information for that year.
Wait, which one's
Okay, so should we go to the last slide? I think we have one or two more. Go ahead, Bailey, or Sheldon.
What do you guys think you would do if your child or your friend were smoking and you didn't know what to do? Would you tell someone? Would you talk to them yourselves? Anybody?
Right, what happens after tonight?
Has anybody been caught in that experience or seen anyone caught in that experience?
See anyone caught in what?
Having to kind of question their friend or family member, loved one about marijuana.
Good.
In the future, if you ever do experience something like a situation like that, these are a few ways you can potentially handle that situation.
We definitely want to promote being a role model for not only your children, but your friends and your peers as well. So if you don't want to be seeing marijuana abuse in other people, then it may be a good idea to reflect those actions as well, so that your peers or your family members can look to you and say, this person isn't using marijuana, so I don't think that it's a good idea to use it.
And you may not believe it, but you can have an impact on someone just by walking into a room. You never know, if anyone could be looking up to you, could be thinking, wow, that person is so cool. I want to be just like them. That happens. That's like every one of you guys. Everyone in this room has someone who looks up to you guys. So it's very important to be a positive role model in life in general, just to not supply, but be that person that they can look up to.
And on that note, it's a good idea to be able to identify your personal values as well as family values. So again, you can communicate to others how you feel about marijuana, and so that the youth are clearly aware of what the expectations are. In a family, if the parents aren't necessarily telling their kids that it's not acceptable, then the kids may think that, well, my parents aren't saying it's bad, so it must be good. And they may think that it's okay to use marijuana.
And it's also important in a family dynamic or friendship that there are ground rules based on your beliefs. And with those ground rules, there are set expectations and rules, kind of, and set consequences and realistic consequences as well. And it's very important to follow through on those, because if you don't, someone could just brush you off and be like, oh yeah, whatever.
She doesn't mean what she says.
Exactly.
Especially from the parent perspective, I have a 9 and an 11-year-old that they know this. Like, my 9-year-old's like, oh, you're doing the braiding tonight, Mom? You know, it's not too soon. Like, we need to talk about and have conversations about, and not lecture at our young people, but provide opportunity for conversation. You know, what have they heard? What have they seen? What do they think? You know, what are the messages that they're getting? I mean, how many of the young people in the room, have your parents talked directly to you about marijuana, period? How many? Come on, show me. I'm not looking at it necessarily. Oh, most of you. Excellent. If not, it was probably your older sibling, right? But a lot of parents come to me and say, oh, I don't know how to do it. And just ask them where they're at with it. Have they heard about it? Have their friends used it? Always talking about the friends is a good idea.
Yeah, and I think one of the takeaways is not to be afraid to start this conversation. And I find the car a perfect
Locked in.
That has worked for me. I have a 22-year-old, and that was always where I seem to be able to get the conversation.
It's a child safety lock.
You can't, no, it's torture. It's locked in there, you can't leave.
That's why it's a good place, darling.
Using your phone.
Text them, right?
I'm a driving instructor.
Oh, there you go. Okay, we can definitely take more questions or have more conversations. The top email, I think, Maria, this is on a handout, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my email if you want to email me something directly. The Clinton Pick is the Partners in Community website, and I will put this PowerPoint on there if you would like to access it. We are taping it, so we're hoping to have a link online that I can email to you afterwards. There's also a lot of other information on Clinton Pick. There's stuff about React. React is our student leadership group, and it's at Morgan, it's at Elliott, and it's at Pearson. So we have 3 different levels of it, which is really fun, and they mentor each other and communicate together. And then the www Learn About SAM is, SAM stands for Smart Approaches to Marijuana. And that website was started by a gentleman named Kevin Sabet, who is the former National Drug Control Policy Advisor to President Obama, who Shelby stood next to at a podium and spoke with at the Capitol, which is really cool. He's a really nice guy, very smart, but he's cutting edge on all of the research. We've seen him speak a few times. So he's a guy that like I believe that there's medical benefits, but there's also a lot of responsibility out there when we're marketing and we're parents and we need to communicate clearly. And then Clinton Pick, if you guys are on Facebook, we have a page. I add stuff to it every day. And if you're really hip and you're on Twitter, there's the Twitter.
Kelly, couple of things. Kevin's book is at the library.
Oh yes, referencing it, yeah.
At the Henry Carter Hall Library. And this page, some of you didn't pick up, it is on the table as you walk out. And then there are evaluations, I just wanted to remind you.
Oh yes, if you guys can fill out the evaluation, that would be great. Are there any questions before we break up or comments?
Yes. If I wanted, could I have somebody come to my driving school and speak when I do my drug and alcohol course?
Sure. Yes. Contact me, Kelley Edwards. Yeah. Be glad to. Very good. Thank you. Anything else, ladies and gentlemen? All right. Thank you guys so much for coming out, and thank you, girls.